Welcome at Enjoy Your Money with
Jaco Quadrat. And Prof, it's a privilege to be with you in the studio again, trying to learn more about all these financial behaviors and emotional and by all these biases that influence people. And
So, honestly, have you learned anything over the past few weeks, months?
I actually have, but I must say, I actually thought this morning sometimes we actually should have a refresher, maybe somewhere just saying we have done this past 6 or 8 or 10 and just mention them again and just have 2 or 3 sentences on each. That will probably be an episode on its own, but just to refresh people's memories. But okay, that's what I thought. So,
Jaco, because it is overwhelming. A few weeks back, I had my class with the master students and we talked about behavioral finance. And when we finished, I asked them, so what do you take from this lesson today? And more than one student said, Prof, I thought that this is not applicable to me. But after seeing the examples, I know that I'm also guilty.
Yeah, and I think that's the reality for me of all these biases. Obviously, like your research that you share shows, not all these biases are applicable to everyone, but I think some of the biases will be applicable to all, as simple as that.
Definitely.
But Prof, you know about my investment portfolio.
I've heard about it.
Yeah, but I had it actually since 2012. And we like family, Prof. They know my name and I know their names.
So, Jaco, and how did that play out for you over the past 14 years?
Prof, brilliantly, because all shares did well the last year.
Jaco, and that is what we are talking about today. Sometimes people stay with original choices so long just because they became emotionally attached. And Jaco, that is called status quo bias.
And
a very nice Latin word, status quo.
Okay, but when you say we get emotionally attached and then we stay with them so long, we're not talking about marriage here, are we?
Status quo bias, Jaco, if I can now put it here to cover for us both, is very good in marriage.
Okay.
Keep your marriage.
Okay, yeah, it is. Okay.
So, Jaco, we are today discussing status quo bias, and that is the tendency for people to prefer things to stay exactly the same. And the reason we prefer for them to stay the same is a bit different than some of the other biases.
Because we are creatures of comfort, Prof. We don't like change.
The moment it's a difficult decision, the research shows us we'll default back to just keeping the status quo. And I always tell my students, if you do nothing, you are still taking a decision.
And that's the thing. People think they are not taking a decision, but they are taking a decision to do nothing. And a lot of times that's a very expensive decision to take.
Exactly, Jaco.
And we actually have, maybe go off topic, but in one of our podcasts, we actually had a discussion with some people, with some person that phoned in and had this exact problem where she said after divorce, she sat on the money that paid up and couldn't make a decision. So it was easier just to leave it there. And she admits she lost a lot of money because there was no return on it.
Precisely. And Jaco, the reality is just that things change constantly these days. And I can remember in the firm that I'm involved, that the reason why they started to do what is called wrapped funds is exactly because of that. Because things change so constantly. You cannot even keep it as is for 12 months because life happens.
Prof, before life happens, I think it's time to take a little music break. So sit back, enjoy the music, and after the break, we'll talk more about status quo bias.
Welcome back after the break. Today we are talking
status quo bias, Prof.
Great. Jaco, good you remember.
Yeah, I'm a good student. So, Prof, time for our Bible verses. So, it seems like our Bible books, the Bible that we read, Prof, has limited books. So we only quote...
Only from 2 authors.
Yeah, 2 authors, either Solomon or Paul. Okay, so I'm with Solomon today, Proverbs 24, verse 50 and 51. I went past the field of a sluggard, past the vineyard of someone who has no sense. Thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. So for me, Prof, if I think about this bias, and we're going to talk obviously much more about it, but if you think about a farmer, if a farmer had status quo bias, it might be a problem if they just sit and do nothing and wait, and they don't plant, they don't put on fertilizer, they don't do anything. I mean, that will be quite a problem.
No, definitely, Jaco. So, and my Bible verse comes from Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what's God's will. And Jaco, the focus for me here is on the renewing of our mind. To just constantly grow and learn about how we think.
And new things. And I think hopefully this whole series that we have on behavioral finance, I mean, it is actually quite a new topic worldwide. And I mean, we have said it often before that if you talk financial literacy, one would assume that people have some knowledge of it, but it's nowhere taught to people. So the chances of people having heard anything about all these behavioral biases, I think, are actually quite slim. So hopefully we are helping to renew your mind. And again, I think but that's not really what Paul meant when he talked about renewing your mind. But I think there's some things that we can relate to that.
Jaco, no, definitely. I mean, the field of behavioral finance, I think, is only about 30 years old now. And I remember when I wanted to learn more about this, I could not find any workshop or any course within South Africa on the matter.
So our listeners are privileged. They get this one for free for you, Mahala. Although it's not like a friend of mine said, it's only worth something if you pay something. So maybe it's just...
now you're confusing even me. But if you want to listen, if Jaco have now convinced you to go and listen to the previous biases
and
that
you can get it for free,
you can go to SoundCloud or Spotify, look for Life FM, and then enjoy your money. Or you can just go to our website, www.jaco2.co.za. And we also, again, want to invite you, please send Jaco some messages here in the studio to 066 5166 917. Tell him what you think about the nonsense that he's talking, or suggest better topics for the future.
Please don't tell me on there what you think about me. Please don't do that. I'm not emotional and I am thick-skinned, but that's going to hurt, I'm sure.
Okay, so listeners, forget what I said. Don't tell Jaco what you think.
Prof, what does your friend Michael say? You just said you couldn't find workshops on it, so you just decided you're going to see the author. That's what you're going to do.
What else can you do?
Yeah, no. So what did your friend Michael Pompian say about status quo bias?
So Jaco, status quo bias, as you know by now, is an emotional bias, and it's because people prefer the current situation simply because it feels familiar and emotionally comfortable. So it does not unsettle us, and that's why we rather stick to what we know.
And even when we almost know change may help, that risk has increased, or there are better options, we stick to the tried and tested.
Jaco, and I've seen that so many times when people, and I'm sure you also, when people come and talk to you and then you explain a financial concept and you show them, but there's a better way to think about this. And then when they walk away, you just know they're not going to do anything about this.
But now you know why.
Now I know why.
Yeah. So Prof, I think it's part of how humans are wired. We naturally prefer familiarity, predictability, and just emotional comfort. I like to tell my students they like their comfy toys. And I think that no change and staying in your current situation is almost like that comfy toy of you. It's something that you can just hold on to and you feel safe.
Precisely, Jaco. And because change creates uncertainty and discomfort, I mean, if there's I know in business management and even in some of our modules in management accounting, they teach change management. So, I mean, if it's a process you need to manage, then certainly it's going to result in some stress.
And difficulty and uncomfortability and so forth.
Yeah. And Jaco, our other, my other friend,
yeah.
Daniel Kahneman, he also in his research pointed out that we know that people experience losses very emotionally, twice as difficult as the equivalent gain. And because change feels risky, we just see the potential loss if we make a change, and that is why we rather stick to what we have. And especially if there may be some costs or some taxes involved, then it's a no because that's a loss.
Yeah, and Prof, I think nowadays with I want to call it modern finance, but all the complex financial products out there. I mean, we are good examples of that. How we thought it's so easy, and then when
I remember that clearly.
Yeah, and now we realize it's not that simple, and now you just start to. I mean, even that it's just starting. Now you have 20 different companies, and each have their own unique products. It's just so complex. What do we choose? How do we decide? So what do? We don't do anything.
Decide not to do anything.
Yeah, we don't decide it consciously. We just
we just don't take any action.
But that is a decision.
Jaco, and then what we also see is that just in general with people's investments, they will pick a fund that maybe was very applicable to them 10 years ago, like that colleague of ours, or like somebody else who I talked to the other day. She retired from her previous, or resigned from the previous employer, but left her pension money at the employer in money market for the past 10 years.
In cash for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And
because it was the default option if you resign.
Yeah, and then no decision is made. And I think what the listeners need to understand here is that there's not a loss that you can see because their money grew in that 10 years.
Yeah.
It increased probably with 5 or 6%. But if you compare that with 10 or 12%, what the markets did over the time, that money can be almost doubled.
It is. And Jaco, it's again, this is not because we are stupid or lazy. It's just how we as humans, I almost want to say, preserve ourselves from emotional strain by just not taking a decision.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it before, how this links to other biases. I can just already see there might be a correlation with something like you talked about Kahneman just now with that loss aversion. Because you're just so afraid when you move it, the markets are going to drop, so you're going to lose something. So now rather don't do anything. So I think there's some link.
No, definitely, Jaco. And then we see it that people don't review their investments.
So that's my 2012.
That's your 2012 because it's just too difficult. So we just keep it there. We rather not know about it. And because of that, they never rebalance their portfolios. They may be in old investment products. That's very expensive.
Yeah, I can keep the listeners busy here on this topic. Stay in expensive products quite some time, and it's almost for me a sad thing about the financial industry. So they also evolve and there's changes, but if you are in an outdated product, they're not going to tell you. Unfortunately, if you are lucky and you have a good financial advisor, he or she will do it. But most of the time, they will just leave you there. Why? Because in a lot of cases, they make more money. We actually had, remember, a long time ago, we had that discussion about bank charges and the different banking products and how that changed significantly. And if you are now paying a big amount for bank charges, you probably had a wrong product. But no one is going to tell you. And now you have to go and do something. Yeah. But people are so afraid to do something that they don't do anything.
Precisely. And Jaco, I think that's why this was quite a prevalent bias, with 6 out of 10 people in our study showing that they do display status quo bias.
Okay, and what is the other findings of this
Jaco,
study?
it also showed us, which is shocking, that people with this bias saved less and they made greater use of credit.
I want to understand that, and that's maybe I'm not the researcher, but I like to understand the why, and I struggle to get the link here.
I think I know that the savings part.
Mm-hmm.
Jaco, because when you start to work and you earn an amount, maybe you take out your retirement annuity or your tax-free savings account for R1,000 per month. But over time, your income increases.
And you never
but
change
that's
it.
never adapted.
Okay, that makes sense. The credit part, I'll have to think about that.
Me too.
But Prof, we are talking a lot about status quo biases. I think the listeners need a comfort break, a music break, get a nice cup of coffee or tea, and after the break, we'll try and make it a bit more practical.
Welkom terug na die breek. Ons praat vandag, Jaco, jy het gesê jy sal weer die Afrikaanse vertaling gee.
Ek sal, want dit is baie maklik, aangesien dit Latyns is, hou ons by die Latyns, so dis net status quo vooroordeel. Ons hoef nie te vertaal van Latyns na Afrikaans nie.
Maar in goeie Afrikaans, Jaco, kom ons hou dit net soos dit is.
Net so.
So Jaco, ja, ek het weer 'n paar vragies vir jou en die luisteraars. Natuurlijk. So Jaco, jy deel nou gereeld met ons oor jou beleggings in jou kripto. So wanneer laas het jy bietjie jou totale portefeulje hersien?
Prof, ek kan gelukkig met alle eerlikheid hierso herken op die lig is ek het dit baie onlangs gedoen. Ek het na al my goed weer gekyk, ek het aandele gaan verkoop wat regtig baie lank al gelê het en niks gedoen het nie. My spekulatiewe aandele het ek verkoop, so nee, my beleggings dink ek is op datum vir nou.
Jaco, en ek moet nou regtig hier op lig vir die luisteraars sê, en ek weet jy dit ook gedoen wat jou versekering betref. Jy's gereeld besig om dit te hersien.
Ja, so die vraag is finansiële produkte en dit sluit eintlik aan by wat ek gesê het voor die breek oor hulle gaan nie altyd vir jou sê nie. Ek was baie ongelukkig toe die een adviseer nou, en dis nie jy nie, dit kan ek daarom nou net sê, jy is iemand spesifiek op 'n produk wat jy my nie kon help nie, net gesê het, maar hoekom is jy nog op hierdie ou produk? Jy kry nie al die voordele. Nou wil ek hom sê, want een of ander adviseer het nie vir my gesê ek moet nie. Niemand, ek weet dit nie, dis hoekom hy adviseer is. So, ek blameer, wat is daai bias wat iemand anders blameer? Ek is nou besig met hom. Dis nie my skuld.
Jy vra my nou baie vrae.
Ja, jy sien, ek kan nie goed onthou nie.
Self-attribution.
Ja, daai een.
Jaco, so, wanneer laas het jy jou testament opgedateer?
Prof, dit is 'n goeie vraag. Maar ek dink daarom nie was groot veranderings wat dit nodig was nie. Ek het hom al in die laaste 5 jaar dink ek opdateer.
Dan Jaco, het jy al finansiële besluite uitgestel of afgestel omdat dit oorweldigend gevoel het?
Ek dink soms stel ek dit uit, maar dan die Engelsman sal sê eventually kom ek daarom daar uit. Ek dink nie as een wat ek nou kan sê dat ek iets uitstel nie.
Jaco, die laaste een is dalk nou nie op jou van toepassing nie, maar ek is seker daar's van die luisteraars op wie dit van toepassing is. Want jy het so 'n goeie verhouding met jou finansiële adviseur. Jy praat amper daagliks met hom.
Ja, nee, ek was reg vir die vraag. Jy moet hom asseblief vra.
Okay, so, liewe luisteraar en Jaco, het jy al lankal gedink daar's iets waaroor jy met 'n adviseur moet gaan praat? Finansiële adviseur, dalk 'n belastingkundige of jou rekenmeester, maar jy stel dit net uit.
Prof, ek kan met oortuiging sê nee, maar ek kan wel vir die luisteraar sterk aanbeveel om vir hulle 'n finansiële adviseur te kry. En as jy nie weet wie nie, praat met my. Ek ken 'n baie goeie finansiële adviseur. Hy het die persoonlikheid van 'n eier, maar hy's 'n goeie adviseur.
Hoe moet daai persoon nou voel?
Ja, soos hy voel niks want hy's 'n eier, maar
okay. So, as jy nou ja geantwoord het op hierdie vraag, wat Jaco nou weer die dam onder die eend geruk het.
Prof, ek dink is tyd om op te hou. Ons moet nou klaar maak. Hoeveel tyd is daaroor? So ek seker nou ons begin praat, weet ek.
Ja, ek weet nie hoe gaan ek die laaste 7 minute maak nie, maar asseblief luisteraars, byt vas saam met my. Jaco, wat is die resultaat van status quo vooroordeel?
Ek dink jy gaan vra van persoonlikhede. Nee, sorry.
Mense kyk nie na hulle portefeuilles nie. Hulle bly in dieselfde fondse, dieselfde risikoprofiele, dieselfde strategie vir baie jare terwyl die wêreld verander het.
En ek wil amper sê, dis in teenoorgesteld van een wat ons nou ook onlangs gedoen het van om die heeltyd goed te jaag. So daar's 'n fyn lyn, hè, om nie die nuutste warm aandeel te jaag nie. Mens wil nie dit doen nie, maar jy moet ook nie niks doen en sê, "Jy's daai ouens het gesê, ek moet nie die hele tyd nuwe aandele koop en ander aandele koop." Dit gaan oor balans.
Dit gaan altyd oor balans. Ja, en dit is presies die volgende punt. Wat dan gebeur baie keer is, jy het nou hierdie uitblinker aandele in jou portefeulje gehad wat toe nou baie goed gedoen het en nou dit so groot gewig geraak in jou portefeulje. Maar jy wil hom nie bietjie herbalanseer en ons het al baie gepraat oor ideale bate, klasgewigte en die tipe goed. So dan raak jou portefeulje eintlik ongebalanseerd en onwetend verhoog jou risiko.
Prof, ek is wel daar skuldig. Dit kan ek ernstig sê. Oor daai laaste stukkie van een aandeel wat baie goed gedoen het. Ek het die ander verkoop, maar die een wat goed gedoen het, ek besluit ek hou hom.
Nou sê 100% van jou portefeulje.
Ja, net so. En dieselfde met die kripto. So.
Jaco, dan waar ons dit ook sien is met erflatings. Waar mense aandele of familiebeleggings of so erf en dan al is dit swak beleggings, wil hulle dit nie verkoop nie want daar's so 'n bietjie emosionele kant aan die erflating verbonde.
Prof, maar sê mos, erfgeld is swerfgeld.
Ja, so dis natuurlik die ander kant. Dan jy hou dit nie, dan spandeer jy dit maar net.
Dis beter as om dit te hou.
Jaco, dan sien ons dit definitief ons het al nou gepraat oor hoekom mense wat hierdie vooroordeel het minder spaar en dit gaan maar daaroor dat dit is altyd makliker om later daarna te kyk, dit iewers in die toekoms te oorweeg en dan 5 jaar later het jy nog niks daaromtrent gedoen nie.
Ja, en ek dink dan, ons het gepraat oor, jy het my gevra hoe gereeld, van laas ek my testament hersien, ek dink testamente en genomineerdes op pensioenfondse, polisse en al daai goed, dis goed wat opdateer moet word, jou familiestruktuur verander, so gaan teer daai goed op, ek wil amper sê om moeilikheid te vermy in die toekoms.
Absoluut, ek het in hierdie week weer met iemand gepraat wat toe gesê het, toe ek vra maar, net as 'n gewetenssaak, is jou testament op datum, toe sê die persoon vir my, nee, nou dat ek daaraan dink, ek het hom nog nie opgedateer van dat ons tweede kind gebore is.
Ja, so.
Jaco, en ek dink die ander ding is net eenvoudig, en ons het al baie keer gepraat oor sosiale media, en nie die magdom inligting wat op die internet beskikbaar is, en ek dink dit absoluut net oorlaai ons. Ek vind myself baie keer, as ek nou oor iets met navorsing doen, daar's soveel inligting, dat ek naderhand nie meer weet wat om te doen nie, want daar is net so baie.
Maar dan vra jy maar vir chat, prof.
Dit is wat ek doen, ja.
So prof, dit klink vir my amper as wat ons probeer vir die luisteraar sê, is dat om niks te doen nie, kan nogal 'n risiko wees.
Jaco, ja, jy moet vir jouself eintlik vra, en jy het dit al van tevore gesê, as ek nou hierdie belegging het, sou ek hom nou gekoop het. Want as ek besluit om hom nie te verkoop nie, dan doen ek niks nie, en dan is dit, soos jy gesê het, net so goed soos 'n koop.
Prof, so watse praktiese stappe het ons vir ons luisteraars, net om dit so vinnig saam te vat?
Ek dink as ek dit vinnig kan saamvat, nommer 1, hersien jou finansies, jou aandele portefeuilles ensovoorts gereeld. Maak seker dit voldoen nog aan jou behoeftes.
En prof, daar wil ek amper sê, ons gaan definitief weer punt hê van 'n finansiële adviseur, maar daai gereeld is ten minste jaarliks. Ek wil amper sê dis die minimum.
Ten minste jaarliks.
En my adviseur kontak my jaarliks baie formeel om afsprake te skeduleer dat ons my finansiële plan bespreek.
Seker maar, want hy nie veel van 'n persoonlikheid het.
Ja, ek doen dit. Ek sien my elke dag, my stuur my e-mail daaroor, maar okay. Ek het gewaarsku oor sy persoonlikheid.
Jaco, dan ek dink ons moet vir onsself besluite vereenvoudig. Moenie gaan soek vir 110 verskillende motiverings vir die besluit wat jy wil neem of goed daarteen in 120 artikels gaan lees nie. Ek dink daar die 80-20 beginsel is waarskynlik goed. Met 20% van die inligting gaan jy waarskynlik 80%.
Ja. En ek wil amper daarbey aansluit, en dis van 'n ander biases wat ons oor onlangs gepraat het, dit is gevaarlik om die hele tyd goed te lees op sosiale media, want al die algoritmes sterk jou baie keer in jou kwaad, wil ek amper sê. Ondersteun jou punt, want jy sien net wat jy na kyk.
Net so. So, Jaco, daarom is as ek die laaste mee kan afsluit, jy moet altyd fokus op jou langtermyn doelwitte en vir jouself afvra, as ek nie hierdie besluit nou neem nie, wat gaan die impak daarvan wees op die langtermyn? En dan weer eens, jy het gesê ons gaan praat oor 'n onafhanklike adviseur of 'n vriend of iemand met wie jy kan jou gedagtes bons om jou net te help om op hierdie doelwitte gefokus te bly.
Prof, al wat ek nie van hou nie, het net die twee te vinnig naby mekaar gesê. Ek kan nie sê finansiële adviseur of 'n vriend. Jy laat dit so klink asof dit amper dieselfde ding is. Dit is ver van mekaar verwyder.
Dit weet ek wel, Jaco, dit weet ek wel.
Okay, prof, wil jy nog iets sê of kan as jy reg vir ons boere som?
Nee, ek is reg vir die boere som. So, liewe luisteraars, ek wil jou uitdaag hierdie week. As daar nou een besluit is waaroor jy al baie lank draai en nie tot dit kom nie, of daar's iets wat jy nie gaan opdateer nie, of daar's iets wat jy nie aanpas nie, daag jouself uit om hierdie week daaraan aandag te gee.
So, prof, op daai ernstige noot, 'n lekker week vir julle.
Lekker week.